How you doing today, folks? Now, first off, I've had this knife for a number of weeks now. However, this is not going to be a review. The person who let me borrow this knife told me I cannot use it. So while I have carried it around the house, handled it quite a bit, I have not put it through any actual edge testing, and as such, I cannot give it a true review. With all that being said, welcome to the first impressions of the Medford Arktika. Now, first off, this is an impression of the knife and not the maker. Greg has said and done some very dumb things over the years. Anyone who's followed him knows that. Personally, I don't care about the man himself, but I do happen to enjoy some of his knives. All right, so we're going to talk about the scales first, and look at these absolutely gorgeous things, these kind of rock pattern-esque stuff with this beautiful sort of dirty bronzy gold. We also have a flamed and phased pivot, as well as a clip. And the hardware is also phased, and actually no, the hardware is just bronzed, excuse me. But this knife closed is absolutely gorgeous. However, this knife opened looks like a bird with a big old fat ass. And that might be some people's things, but it's not really mine. But again, closed, it's pretty. And with all that being said, it's also beautifully chamfered and contoured. There's really no hot spots at all when actually just kind of running your hands through. There's slight ones on this jimping because there just has to be. It's the nature of the jimp. But other than that, everything is really smooth, very contoured, very chamfered, and is very comfortable in the hand overall. Now, as far as it actually being opened, again, this knife is such a strange piece because it looks so good and feels so good while closed. And as soon as you actually open it, it's pretty lackluster. For starters, we have an immediate hot spot right here where this actual lock bar is. As you can see, this whole thing is kind of sculpted to a point to make it look very interesting, and it does look very interesting, but it also provides an immediate hot spot. This piece is sculpted to have your finger go in there. Maybe my hands are just too big, but for me personally, it doesn't go in fully. So more than half of my finger is on this point right there, which is not comfortable. Furthermore, this clip, which is just slightly off center, is very much a hot spot. There's a pretty bad hot spot right along this edge right there. That's not going to like cut you or anything like that, but it's definitely really uncomfortable to say the very least. Now, this knife does come equipped with a finger choil, and when you use it, the ergonomics are significantly improved. But again, to be restricted to only being able to use this knife with a choil, to me, is a profound negative. As far as the actual blade goes, we have some beautiful grind lines, a very sharp edge that, again, I've not been able to test, but I mean, you can feel it. Like it cuts into your thumbnail cleanly everywhere. I mean, this would absolutely slice through a whole bunch of stuff. We have about 4.5 inches of D2 steel. This is CPM D2, so a higher equivalent than the regular kind of unpowdered version of it. But because it is D2, as you can see, we have some rusting here. I have not, again, really carried this knife. I have not used it at all. This arrived in the package from me from Dirk with already having rust on it. Did that happen in transition? Did it happen prior to it being in my hands? I honestly have no idea. But again, tool steels rust very, very easily. You have to oil them at all times, and one moment of forgetting equals that. Now, Medfords, for the most part, are known for having big, thick, gigantic blade stocks, and this one is not the thickest. It's definitely not at the same size as the .26 Praetorian tie, but it's a pretty fat one. It definitely does still perform, I would assume. Because of that nice grind, it's still going to be an absolute cutter, but it is a pretty thick stock, and it is overall a pretty heavy knife. So if you're into Medford knife and tool, chances are you've handled one of these models, or you at the very least have had an eye on them. For me personally, the ergonomic king is the Medford full-size Marauder. That being said, under that, I'm going to go ahead and put the Praetorian tie. Under that, I'm going to go ahead and put the Medford Fighter Flipper. And way on the bottom is going to be this Arktika because it does not have very good ergonomics. Also, there's a nice size comparison for you. It's definitely a big knife. It is definitely an interesting knife, but it's not really one that I'm super juiced about at the moment. So as far as your general Edc size comparisons, again, we have some basic stuff here so you can get a real feeling of what it actually is in hand. It's not the biggest knife I own or have ever handled, but it's definitely a pretty fat one. Now, in closing, do I like this knife and what score would I give it? For me personally, the Arktika is very much more about form over function, and that's not really a good thing. Now, Medford bills itself as the tactical, brand or whatever. They like to advertise made in the USA, deployed with our troops, everything else. So for a knife to be pretty but not functional, for me is almost an insult, and I really am very shocked that they even put this thing out there. Because again, I haven't even been able to use this knife, but just holding it, just casually, relaxingly holding it, this hurts my hand. So once this knife's actually put to work, I have to imagine this is going to be an absolute ergonomic nightmare. And honestly, I don't even want to use this knife. As soon as I held it, I was just like, no. And weeks down the line, I'm still just like, no. So with all that being said, my overall score of the Medford Arktika is going to be, again, as usual, 2 scores. I'm going to do one just purely based on looks right now, and looks-wise, this will get a 9. This is a fantastic looking knife. It's a beautiful knife. If you happen to be in the investor collector category, you could definitely pick this up and have an interesting piece in your collection. Again, there's not really any other knife that looks like this. It's kind of Spyderco, Strider-esque, and it's a whole bunch of different amalgamations and makes it for a very interesting piece. That being said, if you are a user, if you are anything besides, if this is going to sit in a safe, who cares, man? But if you're going to use this knife, what would I give this knife? I would give this knife a 3. This is one of the worst ergonomics knives I've ever handled by far. Again, I like the blade. It's very interesting looking. Does not match with the actual handle though. The handle, which again is very pretty, is not functional. There are so many things wrong with this knife that I am baffled that it ever left the production stage or the pre-planning stage or whatever. This is also a very expensive knife. You can find these right now for around $1,000. These retailed when they were actually around for around $1,500. This is not worth that at all. Again, I always shoot everybody straight, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to play any games with anybody. This knife was lent to me by a buddy of mine named Nick, who is a very big, scary gentleman. I don't want any problems with you, Nick. So I'm tempted to be like, it's a good knife, it's fine, but that's not who I am as a person. If you like this knife, that is fantastic, more power to you. Me personally, I kind of hate it, and I don't really hate anything, so that should say a lot. Now, with all that being said, folks, as always, I love you all very, very much with all my heart. I love all of you. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for watching. If you haven't stayed tuned to the end of the video, I definitely really, really appreciate you. From the bottom of my heart, you guys give a damn what I have to say, and that is an amazing feeling. So I love you, especially those that stay tuned. I really, really love you. I really, really appreciate you. And stay tuned for something cool. It's going to be interesting, and I think you're all going to be very happy with what comes next. As always, folks, I love you. Take care. Have a great day, and bye.